Okay.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to my webinar on Key 19, the Sun, and Key 20, Judgment. Let's begin. We're entering the final chapters of our book. I know that I've thought about this, and I'm sure that you have too. Why didn't we get a set of directions when we were born? A little guide that pops out at the same time that we do. If you've read all of the cards up to this point, you may have begun to realize that there was a guide. It just got lost in the delivery room, also known as planet Earth. The story goes that God first taught the Kabbalah to the angels before the world was created. We received it 3 times after that. The archangel Raziel gave it to Adam and Eve as they left the Garden of Eden. The Kabbalah was handed out so that we could find our way back to paradise, the perfect GPS system. After a while, people lost interest in the return and were far more interested and preoccupied with the mundane world. The directions were lost. Nothing had been written down. No backup was made. So here we have Moses and the 10 Commandments. The directions were next given to Abraham as part of God's covenant with him. Abraham verbally passed them on to the priesthood. They were lost again when the Jewish people lived in Egypt. After the Exodus, Moses went up the mountain 2 times. He returned with the 10 Commandments on his first trip. As the story goes, the second time he went up, he received the inner teachings. And these he shared with his priesthood. One tradition says that he wrote down the inner teachings. He was pretty smart. He finally figured out that this was needed. He called it the Kabbalah. He hid the text in a cave. Eventually, many centuries later, the text was found and published as the Sefer Yetzirah, or Book of Formation. There's a copy of what it looks like now, current edition. There are also many other tales about the discovery. The direct experience of God is central to the idea of the Kabbalah. Therefore, the term gnosis would be applicable here too. And this central idea is also the point of our little book called Tarot, also known as the set of directions. As you may have noticed by now, the cards also include all forms of spirituality as paths of the return. So here we are at Key 19, the Sun. It symbolizes the 5th stage of spiritual unfoldment. This is the stage of the new birth from natural humanity to spiritual humanity. In the natural man, the powers of subconsciousness are stifled and perverted. This is by suggestions of erroneous conscious thinking by the conscious mind. By applying the correct conscious self-direction to his efforts to grow, man experiences a new birth. This practical method may be summarized by, quote, be transformed by the renewing of your mind, unquote. The new birth is a very real process. It is a deepening inner realization of the true status of man in the cosmic order. All material resources are under your control. So this is the stage wherein all material resources have become under your control. Yet, you still feel yourself to be a separate, or at least distinct entity. You have become an unobstructed vehicle for the power of the one will. The one will has ruled those forces always. But this is not full liberation, but it is a much higher stage than any of those preceding it in the tarot tableau. The number of this key is 19. 19 stands for the expression of the power symbolized by 9, the hermit, Through that, symbolized by 1, the magician. The hermit is a tarot symbol of the universal will, or the single free willpower of the one identity. The magician represents the plane of personal self-consciousness. Therefore, to understand this, the number 19 must designate the expression of the one will at the level of personal self-consciousness. That's kind of an amazing statement. So we have really, in this card, we have really taken a big leap ahead to have that level of consciousness at a personal level. So the Hebrew letter resh, associated with this key, means head and face of man. And you can look at the lower right-hand corner of the card, has those symbols. You see resh, you see the sun, you see a face, and you see an R, which is the Roman letter for resh. In the head are gathered together all the distinctive human powers. With the noun head, we associate the ideas of that which comes first or takes the lead, and therefore has precedence, priority, and superiority. Also, the head of any project is its organizer, director, guiding power, or manager. Thus, we may expect to find in the symbols of key 19 plain intimations of authority and leadership. The sun is the heavenly body assigned to the Hebrew letter resh. In both testaments, the Bible calls God the Son of Life and Lights. In all other great scriptures, the sun is a principal emblem of deity. In the alchemical writings, the great work is the operation of the sun. So this is something that's actually something you do. It's not an intellectual exercise. You are actually doing something. This is an operation of the sun. The sun is also the symbol for alchemical gold. This living gold, in its primary manifestation, is the radiant energy of the sun. The sun is truly the first matter of the great work. You've probably heard that expression, the first matter, used, and you always go, oh, what does that mean? And here you have it. The ageless wisdom is an expression of direct experience, possible for all men, but known to relatively few. The spiritual, fluidic, golden water of the alchemist is a reality. It may be perceived as immediately and definitely as any other phenomenon in nature. So ageless wisdom is a record of the experience of those who, looking in the right direction, have seen into something, while the uninitiated can only look at. In the human body, there is a point of entrance that admits this living radiance into the field of personality. It is a group of nerve cells forming the cardiac ganglion. It is in the sympathetic nervous system. It is just above and behind the heart, whose beat it controls. Through this center, the undifferentiated life power enters the body, just as an electric current enters a building through the main switch. The nerve cells of the sun center charge the bloodstream with this current of radiant energy. It does this as the blood passes through the heart. In astrology, the sun rules the sign Leo. Leo governs the heart. Key 19 is the dominant force manifested by the process depicted in Key 8, strength, associated with Leo. Leo also governs the back and the spinal cord. The spinal cord is the main channel of the serpent power in the physical organism. We also use the term for the serpent power is the kundalini. The ability to control this force is not difficult to develop once its nature is understood. In Key 8 Strength, as you recall, the young lady holding the mouth of the lion, we are told that the conditions under which it may be brought into activity safely are utmost purity of mind and desire, highest aspirations and ideals, and utter unselfishness in action. Expressing these states of consciousness through right action will modify your bodily organism. When your body is sufficiently altered, you will be brought automatically into the proper condition of awakening the serpent power. This is very important because we're dealing with very powerful forces. And so the tarot teaches us how to put ourselves in a state of mind of Key 8 Strength so that we can work on the awakening of the serpent power safely. The sun is exalted in the sign Aries. Aries is represented in tarot by Key 4, the Emperor. The key word of the number 4 is order, system, regulation, management, supervision. The number 4 relates to the classifying activity of self-consciousness. This is my great attraction to this. It's like a little bookkeeping system. You could open a drawer, open a file, learn all about that section, put it away, open another one. And so the classifying activity of self-consciousness, what works for me, what doesn't work for me, you start to get a handle on this. This classifying activity is reason. Mental imagery is useful to us chiefly after it has been systematized or put in order. Yeah, you figure out what's important to you and then you go for it. You don't just sort of flop about in life. Go back and take a look at Key 4 to understand more fully what is being indicated here. Let's look further at how the symbolism of Key 19 demonstrates this regeneration. The sun has 8 pointed star rays and 8 curvy rays. On Key 17, the star, the wavy rays were not developed. Here, there has been a development of power in the wavy rays. The wavy rays represent the feminine aspects of the life power. Of course, I always liked it. The feminine aspect is the wavy rays. That's kind of cool. So, in Key 19, we see the equal development of masculine, pointed, and feminine, wavy, forms of universal radiant energy. Further, it is established that the pointed rays refer to the solar radiance itself, the alchemical sun. The wavy rays refer to the lunar current of the life power, the moon. Now we have the 48 beams. In addition to these larger rays are shown 48 beams in groups of 3, each group placed between a pointed and a wavy ray. These refer to the expression of the one force in works of integration, preservation, and disintegration. So this number 3 is very important, and you'll see it in many places, and it means integration, preservation, and disintegration. The number 48 reduces to 12 and also is 4 times 12. So there is a suggestion of some connection to Key 12, suspended man. Go back and take a look at Key 12. The number 48 is the value of the Hebrew noun kokab, the name of the planet Mercury. So, the 3 types of rays extending from the solar disk suggest a combination of sun, pointed, moon, wavy, and Mercury, the 48 beams. Consider now the separate letters of the Hebrew noun eben, E-B-N in Hebrew, meaning stone. The first is Aleph, symbol of the life breath, typified by the Fool, Key 0. The second is Bet, representing Mercury and self-consciousness. the magician, key 1. The third is none, corresponding to Scorpio and key 13, transition. Add the numbers together, 0, 1, and 13, and their total is 14. This is the number of temperance, key 14. See, and one of the things you're picking up on in this class is we're referring back to many of the prior keys and cards, and so their influence on this particular card that we're studying today. Key 14 symbolizes the knowledge and conversation of the holy guardian angel. So that's to say, when we establish communication with the higher self, we enter into a state of consciousness through the influx of the all-power, key 0, the Fool, into the field of personal self-consciousness, key 1, the Magician. From there it is directed to the subconscious levels so as to modify the serpent power or Scorpio force, key 13, transition. The body chemistry is changed by this. As a result of the activities and practices of the practical occultist, the force known as libido is raised so that it awakens the brain centers. This awakening brings us the higher order of knowing in which the Father, Ad, Alph, Beth, and the Son, Ben, Beth, Nun, are seen to be one identity. That conscious realization is therefore not only the stone, it is also medicine, for it truly heals all diseases of mind and body. Sometimes it is called the medicine of metals, for the alchemical metals are the 7 interior stars, the chakras. The interior stars are related to the nerve centers in the body. Remember, this is a physiological as well as a psychological transformation. The body chemistry is changed. The subtle structure of the cells is altered. Thus, in very truth, we are reborn or regenerated. With the sun having a human face, the sun symbol becomes a representation of the perfected operation of the sun. The alchemists say the great work is performed by the sun and moon with the aid of Mercury. So we've already covered where that comes from in the card and how it's demonstrated. Its perfection gives us the stone, a ben, which can never be made except by the grace of God. Therefore, to attain the goal, something more than personal effort is required. That something more is an influx of power from the superconscious level of the life power's self-expression. The series of short lines around the sun disk number 125. This is the cube of numbers 5, 5 times 5. This cube represents the power of that number exercised in a threefold manner or throughout the entire three-dimensional world. Remember, number 5 represents the pentagram, symbol of the dominion of spirit over the elements. Therefore, 125 conveys symbolically the idea of the extension of that dominion over and through every part of nature. That dominion is the stone and the universal medicine. In addition to the stone corresponding to keys 0, 1, and 13, so that key 14, temperance, sums up one aspect of the stone, there is another aspect to it. If you add the digits of 14, 1 plus 4, they equal 5. This demonstrates a connection to key 5, the teacher. The knowledge and conversation of the holy guardian angel is none other than continuous intuitive perception of reality communicated through interior hearing. We not only enjoy knowledge through this interior hearing, but also conversation. Number 14 is also the value of the Hebrew letter Zahav, which means alchemical gold. The sun is shown here as a living force. We have something in common with it. It enters intimately into our lives, and its solar energy constitutes a circuit. Thus, the solar energy shines in us, and our energy shines in the sun. The Hebrew letter Yod is falling from the sun. There are 6 on each side of the card, and 1 in the center, totaling 13. The number 13 is the value of the Hebrew nouns for unity and love. Since they are yods, there is a connection to key 9, the hermit. His headpiece is a yod, and it is, if you remember. Also to the law of response associated with that letter yod, and also with the secret activity associated with the sign Virgo, which rules the small intestines. It's always important what goes through your intestines. The number 13 also suggests key 13 transition and the sign Scorpio. It is the combination of the forces of Scorpio, 13, and Virgo yods that bring about the state of regeneration, wherein unity and love are made manifest throughout the personality. The 4 sunflowers symbolize the kingdoms already perfected, so they face the children as if the children were their sons, to which they turn for life and light. They are dependent upon the children. The 5th sunflower, over there on the right, turns towards the sun above, for it and the children symbolize the same thing. It is shown in bud, for it is just beginning to develop. The natural man and the 3 kingdoms below him, which are the mineral, animal, vegetable, they are dependent on the newborn spiritual humanity. They receive their sustenance through that spiritualized flowering of the human race. Spiritual humanity, the upturned flower, turns only to that which is above for support. This is important to understand. The stone wall, the wall is made of stone, representing forms of truth. It is not the same as the bricks of key 15, the tower. It has 5 layers to show that it is built of materials from sense experience. Those materials are aspects of truth. The sense experience is not denied in the ageless wisdom, even though our senses don't give us a full report. The report is true as far as it goes. So keep that in mind. The downside to this, there are some who believe that there are no reports beyond those given by the senses. The children are new, repeating the symbolism of key 17, the star. In key 17, we see the nature as Isis, unveiling herself as truth. She's the one holding the 2 pitchers of water. Here, nothing is concealed also. The veils that hide the truth from us are of our own making. Our ignorance is the veil. The masters are the most childlike and transparent of human beings. Their lives are simple. Their words are simple. Their directness is simply misunderstood. Both children turn their backs to the wall and the sundial, which represents time. The 2 concentric circles, or fairy ring, upon which they dance, are symbols of the 4th dimension. Aha! We're moving to the 4th dimension here. The way of the spiritual man is not the way of the natural man. The spiritual man centers himself in the inner circle of manifestation. By repeated practice, he has made habitual his inner identification with the one spiritual self. The children are of equal stature. In the natural man, the subconscious mind is subordinate. She is subject to the misunderstandings and misinterpretations of the masculine or conscious mind. Here, subconsciousness is released from the bondage of erroneous suggestion She is under correct application of the law of suggestion. Subconscious habits have been established that repudiate utterly the notion that because we cannot attain to certainty through sensation, we cannot attain to certainty at all. This is why the first tarot card is called the Fool. The certainty of freedom possessed by the spiritual man is knowledge gained by means which go beyond sensation. This is folly to the uninitiated, and the world of sense-bound humanity derides it. The way of certainty is the way of nonsense. This is not the same as the word nonsense. The girl makes the gesture of repudiation toward the wall. This indicates that subconsciousness has been trained to accept the other way. The boy holds his palm away from the wall, a gesture of acceptance. These two figures represent the regenerated personality. In the three kingdoms below that of natural man, there is an ever-increasing development of consciousness, approximating in the higher animals something very like man's self-consciousness. Something to think about. The sun has risen above the walled garden of truth to manifest its glory unto all who may receive. Receive the kingdom of heaven like a child. Quote, let the children come to me, and do not hinder them, for to such belongs the kingdom of God. Truly, I say to you, whoever does not receive the kingdom of heaven like a child shall not enter it. And now let's move on to key 20, judgment. In key 20, we are on the threshold of blending with the universal mind. Whoa! This is the 6th stage of spiritual unfoldment according to the tarot. At this stage, we realize that our personal relationship, that our personal existence is the relationship between our subconsciousness and self-consciousness. Also that these two are really modes of universal consciousness. So we now know that our personality has no separate existence. And this is also confirmed by a 4th dimensional experience. This experience removes the delusion of separateness. So all of this is discussed in key 20 of judgment. The number 20 is the number of the Hebrew letter Kaf. Kaf is assigned to key 10, Wheel of Fortune. Kaf signifies mental grass. And you can see it in the lower right-hand corner of the picture. The shape of the letter looks like a grasping hand. Kaf signifies comprehension. It's mental grasping, mental comprehension. So here we see the result of completing the cycle of manifestation represented by the wheel. It's the Wheel of Fortune. At this point, you know that will, the point of judgment, key 20. This is the will to freedom, to joy, perfect health, and abundance. It is a will to good, to the impartation of every good and perfect gift. You comprehend it as the will that finds expression in all activity. When you arrive at this point, daily experience is a succession of miracles. When we begin to see the light at the beginning of our quest, it's the lightning flash experience of key 16, the tower. While it lasts, structures of error are broken down. But then darkness returns and we wait for the next flash. What is being expressed in key 20, judgment, is a perpetual experience of this light, a perpetual recognition of the power of the Spirit. Hence, the mode of consciousness of this card is the perpetual intelligence. The number 20, read from units to tens, expresses the know thing through memory. That is, the fool's vision through the law of the high priestess, key 2. We are freed from lapses of memory that occur to us earlier in the work. We live the truth every moment. With this recognition comes a new kind of consciousness. We no longer sleep. We put our bodies to rest. We remain awake, able to function consciously in the fourth dimension. We really serve God day and night. This is one of the meanings of conscious immortality. Most people don't recall their nightly experiences. Once this power of recalling the experience is developed, it is possible to plan for the night's activities, and also it will become part of your day's activities. Until this is known experimentally, no human language can convey the alteration that it makes in one's whole life. The Hebrew letter Shin is the third and last of the Hebrew mother letters. It resembles 3 tongues of flame rising up from a fiery base. It is attributed to the element of fire. The sound of the letter Sh is an admonition to silence. The letter Shin corresponds by sound to the final admonition of the masters, be silent. The fourfold injunction in the study of the great work is know, will, dare, and then be silent. Serpents are recognized as symbols of wisdom. They are silent, subtle creatures. Jesus told his disciples to be wise as serpents. He is emphasizing, for those who have ears to hear, the ancient doctrine of silence. This arises from the truth that the great secret simply cannot be told. It is folly to try to tell it. Paul Foster Case explains, quote, "The wise waste no time, invite no misconception, expend no energy in vain efforts to tell. When they speak, it is not to tell the secret, but to point the way." Unquote. The speech of the wise is like learning a foreign language. At first, it is gibberish, meaningless. If we persist in our studies, it will begin to make sense. One day, the very same words that were unintelligible are now clear as a bell. You must learn the silent speech of symbols for yourself. Then you will find that you are in communication with others who know it. Shin means tooth or fang. The tooth of judgment breaks down and feeds upon all that isn't necessary to our newfound spiritual life. We use our teeth to break down food into component parts. Thereby, they may be correctly digested and prepared for assimilation. When the great judgment day arrives, not necessarily with bodily death, the former ideas of separation are broken down. Quote, "When the Holy Spirit consumes all barriers from your life, the higher consciousness consumes the lower." The title of this key is Judgment. On the surface, this refers to the day, way in the future, when all souls shall be judged. This is a veil for the real meaning. Of course, there's always veils. Judgment is a consequence of weighing evidence. Please note the figure on the right. Justice is always represented by scales. See the ancient Egyptian representations of the judgment of the soul. The candidate's heart, please on the left, was put in the balance with the feather of truth. It seems we've seen that symbol on the cover of a friend of ours' new book. Judgment implies estimation or measurement. Paul Foster Case explains, quote, "One might say that the great secret answers the question, how much do you weigh? That is to say, we have to see that since all that is real of us is identical with the one thing, our true weight must be the same as its true weight. The consciousness of totality comes in here." Unquote. When the weight of the heart, the central consciousness of man, corresponds to the weight of the feather of truth, then the scales of judgment are balanced. Also, judgment is a reasoned conclusion. The ageless wisdom offers a reasonable doctrine. St. Paul, writing of the giving up of the false sense of personality, calls it a reasonable sacrifice. Thus, in the symbols of key 20, we find many references to the number 4. This is the tarot number particularly associated with reason. Take a look at key 4, the Emperor card, the key of reason. A judgment is a reasoned conclusion. Reason leads to that conclusion. Therefore, judgment is also the end of reasoning. In key 20, reasoning has come to its end. A new order of knowing is manifested. Old things have passed away. This happens through the operation of the law pictured by key 13, transition. Key 13 is the agency of the principle of right discrimination pictured by key 6, the lovers. These 3 keys, 6, 13, and 20, are the 6th column in the tarot tableau. This is something we'll cover in the future, these columns of the tarot tableau and how they interact, these cards. There is to be no more weighing of evidence, no more discussion of pros and cons, no more argument for and against. That is all done with. In this card, we shall find abundant evidence of this. And finally, judgment is a decision. It has direct consequences in action. The word decision is derived from a Latin root meaning to cut. The judgment key cuts off forever our connection with the false knowledge of, quote, this world, unquote. It puts an end to our limitation to the 3-dimensional world. It terminates our sense of mortality. Remember the symbology of Shin, the letter, the Hebrew letter. The former ideas of separation are broken down. To have done with all this misery, nothing less, that is the promise. To have done with it forever. Shin is a devouring flame of realization which consumes the whole unhappy, brood of lies. Let's look at the card a little further. Can you imagine? Can you believe how much symbology is in this card? It's amazing. Let's see how its symbology conveys these ideas. Gabriel is the angel. He carries the trumpet. He summons the dead from their coffins. He is the archangel of the element of water. He is the archangel of the moon. Observe that 2, the number of the key attributed to the moon, the high priestess, is the root number of 20. It's to the left of the 0. That's what they mean by that. In key 2, all the water shown in the tarot has its source. The presiding power in the scene depicted by key 20 is the power of reflection, the root power of the universal memory. I think we've all discussed memory as a very important part of the great work. Gabriel means might of God. This suggests that human personality is raised from the depth of 3-dimensional consciousness. This is done by a power descending from above. We talked about that earlier, rather than by human personality's own efforts. The spirit of life in us never forgets itself. Thank God for that. When the day of judgment comes, we hear its trumpet call. It proclaims our true nature. It calls us from the death-like sleep of belief in mortal existence. The angel is enclosed in the geometrical design. It consists of 2 circles. They exactly fill, it's not filling, a larger circle formed by the clouds. The angel's head is in the upper circle. His body is in the lower. This figure is an ancient symbol of the 4th dimension. Interesting to note. 2 circles surrounded by an oval. He rides on red wings of fire. Recall that red is the color of action, courage, and strength. White clouds surround the angel. The true nature of the self is veiled by appearances. The substance of these appearances is the stream of consciousness typified by the robe of the high priestess. That's that water coming through. This flow of the stream of consciousness gives rise to the ideas of time. It is these ideas that partly veil from us the true nature of the one identity. The 12 rays of light pierce the clouds. In Hebrew wisdom, the number 12 refers to the name Hu, spelled H-O-A and H-V-A in Hebrew. This is the third person pronoun he. He is attributed to Kether. Kether is the crown of primal will in the tree of life diagram. So that's the very top sphere in the tree of life diagram, Kether. This symbolizes that the light piercing the veil is the light of the true self, called he by Kabbalists, and Gabriel personifies one aspect of that light. 7 rays come out of the golden trumpet. Gold represents the sun and the cardiac plexus. The trumpet amplifies sound. This expresses that the awakening of higher consciousness is accomplished by certain definite sounds. These sounds are represented by the 7 little rays. The rays correspond to the sound vibrations of the 7 interior centers, aka chakras, or in the West, we call them metals. They are represented by the 7 small stars in key 17, the star. The icebergs in the background refer to an ancient text. It says that in order to perform the great work, we must fix the volatile. The volatile is the stream of conscious energy symbolized by water. So we have to fix this. The idea here is that the flow of the stream of consciousness gives rise to the illusions from which our delusions are derived. When we make the flow solid or fix it by stopping it, so fixing in this case is stopping it, we are set free from bondage. The sea is the end of a flowing of water, like a river or stream. So this suggests the same ideas of termination and conclusion that we found associated with the word judgment. The 3 stone coffins are supported by the sea. This suggests that the real support or basis for the appearances of physical form is really the vibration of mental energy. The sea is the great sea of racial consciousness, operating at the subconscious level. The coffins are rectangular. This suggests the apparent solidity and impenetrability of 3-dimensional forms. The human figures stand upright. Their bodies are at right angles to the bottoms of the coffins. This is an attempt to represent the mathematical definition of the 4th dimension. The 4th dimension is at right angles to all 3 dimensions of space as we perceive them. The 3 figures are the man as self-conscious awareness, the woman as subconsciousness, and their product, the child, the regenerated personality. Their postures hint that each figure represents a Roman letter. The woman denotes L. The child's arms over his head make a V. The man, in the traditional posture of Osiris risen, crosses his arms to form an X. Thus, the 3 symbolize LVX, the Latin for light. The man is in an attitude of passive adoration. In the 4th dimensional consciousness, the self-conscious mind realizes that it does nothing whatever of itself. The subconscious mind is a channel through which the higher life descends to lower levels. The X crosses out or cancels the idea of personal origination for any action. The woman actively receives the influx of power from above. Her posture suggests the letter L. This is related to Labid and Key 11, justice. Key 11 represents the faithful intelligence. So under the influence of right reason, subconsciousness expresses perfect faith. The child faces toward the interior of the picture. He represents insight. This is the turning of the mind away from the false reports of external sensations. His posture suggests a V or Vav. Vav, the Hebrew letter, refers to the teacher, Key 5. He is thus a type of intuition. So, the mode of consciousness associated with Key 5 is the triumphant and eternal intelligence. The inner voice will always work out a successful course of action. I'll mention that again. When you're listening to the self, the inner voice, it will always work out a successful course of action for you to take. The three figures are nude. Suggested is a state of perfect innocence, freedom from shame. Shame being that false emotion engendered by our incorrect interpretation of the real nature of human life and its functions. It also suggests perfect intimacy. Their flesh is gray. This shows that they have overcome all pairs of opposites. Gray is the tint resulting from the combination of any two complementary colors. This also suggests that there is a perfect blending of the 7 Hebrew letters that are pairs of opposites. Remember it. Okay. So you have life and death, Key 1, the magician. Peace and strife, which is Key 2, high priestess. Wisdom and folly, Key 3, the empress. Wealth and poverty, Key 10, wheel of fortune. Beauty and ugliness, Key 16, the tower. Fertility and sterility, Key 19, the sun. Dominion and slavery, Key 21, the world. Gray also shows that the forces of the 7 centers, the chakras, have been perfectly coordinated. This is a pretty high state of consciousness. The banner on the trumpet is a square. It measures 5 by 5 units. This 25 cells is the magic square of Mars. Fire, the quality of Mars, predominates in Key 20. Key 20 is placed in the tarot tableau beneath Key 13. Key 13 represents the sign Scorpio, ruled by Mars. Both the banner and the cross are symbols of the number 4. The same number is intimated by the 4 figures in the scene. The number of Key 20 is 4 by 5. The square banner is bounded by 4 lines, each 5 units in length. So what does this mean? The number 4 relates to Key 4, the Emperor. He stands for Aries, a fiery sign ruled by Mars. He is also the tarot symbol of sovereign reason. Sovereign reason. This leads to decision or right judgment. The mode of consciousness of this card is the perpetual intelligence. This may be thought of as being the product of the interaction of reason, Key 4, and intuition, Key 5. We must reason rightly before we receive the inner teaching of intuition. Others who do not reason rightly will not hear the angel's triumphant call. It's very important to get to know the Emperor. The tarot has provided you with many tools to use along your hero's journey. Use them. And as we've discussed these tools in the past, We are talking concentration before you get to meditation, contemplation, retrospection, silence, all these wonderful tools. Right action, right thinking, discrimination of where you place your attention. Do not be deceived by the seeming simplicity of this work. Nature operates by simple means. The great work is an imitation of those simple methods whereby she accomplishes marvelous results. Thank you for attending my webinar on Key 19, the Sun, and Key 20, Judgment. Please go to my website on gatesoflight.wordpress.com for more information about the symbols and colors of the keys. I will also be posting a recording of this webinar on my website. Does anyone have a question?
Not right now. Thank you both. Lovely session.
You're very welcome. I'm sorry it went so fast. It was just, I'm referring to a lot of the other cards, so there was quite a bit more information.
Oh, it was fine. It was just fine. Everything needs to be revisited anyway. So, in many, you know. So.
That's, yeah. I mean, you've got to figure when I'm writing this, I've spent hours on it, so I'm
this is probably only the surface of what could be said.
Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah. There's many other things. Especially, I've introduced the idea of sound in this particular card. Every tarot card has a particular sound, and when I first got my deck of cards many years ago, I also got a little sound thing that you blow into, and it will give you the different notes. Builders of the Avenue have that, and you can purchase it from them. And each card also has its own color, and colors have rates of vibration. So there's an interaction all regarding those things that I don't really get into in the cards when I'm on these. Things to look at.
Absolutely.
Thank you for all the work and for putting this out there.
And then next week, we're going to do the world, and then I'm going to do the first column called Bondage of the first first column with the Magician, Strength, and the Deceiver in conjunction with the World card. So that'll be fun next time.
Well, thank you very much.
You're very welcome, and thank you for attending and doing this. I really appreciate that.
Thank you, Margot.
You're very